Okay, I'm going to start off by showing you how I do a sky. So I'm going to spritz my water, and I left my palette like you have at home, at church, so I'm going to use this palette. And the first thing I'm going to do is mix some sky color. So I'm going to use like this kind of true blue here. This is called ultramarine, French ultramarine actually. And then I'm going to add a little bit of the this turquoise, since that's kind of similar to the color that y'all have in your palette, and mix those together. And you can see I've got a lot of water in there. That's good. And so I'm going to clean my brush, but I'm not wiping it off. I'm keeping it pretty damp. And I'm going to just fill up this paper here, leaving some spots for clouds. Make some big billowy clouds or regular clouds, however you want it. I won't fill the whole paper, but let me just go right there. Okay, so while it's still pretty wet, you can see my paper tries to curl when it's wet. That's okay. I'm going to keep it pretty wet. Can you see how wet it is? And then I'm going to, with a wet brush, dip into this and swipe it across here at the top while it's really wet. And then I'm just going to use my brush to move the paint down. I'm kind of watching to see where my white spaces are and not filling those in, but I'm not really getting much more paint on my brush. I'm kind of using the paint that I already put on the paper. I'm using that to fill in those spaces. Might need a little bit more, but I'm going to get my brush wet to do it, because I want a real faint blue down here at the bottom, just a touch. Okay, so there, you can kind of see where that is now. If you want to add a little bit more color to the top, you can even go back. I'm just going to get a dab of that and go back across the top a little bit. But I'm going to always pull it down to kind of let it fade down to the pale blue. Okay, so hold that so you can see it a little bit. Now I can tell that right here it's going to dry with a really hard line, because you can already see that it's much darker right there. So I'm going to get my brush wet, but I'm going to dab it off and try to soften that line just a little bit before it gets dry. Same here. And you can kind of even change the shape of your cloud a little bit at that point if you want to. I see a hair in my paint. By just using a barely wet brush and kind of softening that line. Alright, I forgot to mix my gray, so here's some gray, which for me is just adding a little bit of black. And I'm going to get my brush really wet so that this is very, and I'm going to spread it out so that it's very faint. And I'm going to go right along the bottom, add just a touch of this right along the bottom, and you don't have to add very much. It's not just a swipe, I'm kind of dabbing it in there, if that makes sense, to make it appear a little bit fluffy. It doesn't have to be all the way across either. It can be just portions of it. Can you see where I did that? Okay, and because clouds often have a little bit of gray here too, just to make them appear kind of cotton candy-ish. I might add a little bit here and there. I'm going to go back with a little bit darker right here, and then I'm going to take my brush and kind of spread that while it's still very damp, because I don't like the harsh lines. I like it to be real kind of ethereal looking. Okay. Hoping you can see that okay. You can take it and kind of spread it. But there's the clouds.